proper implementation of the roadmap in terms of digital solutions. Instead, it provides for a professional approach. Digital tools can be used to register participants, verify mandates, transparently remain in a mode that ensures maximum trust and stability. For Ukraine, in a state of war, this means at least a hybrid model. Offline is a basic option, plus digital auxiliary modules, mandatory backup procedures, and testing of solutions in pilot mode only after reaching a level of technological assurance that is perceived by the community as unquestionable. Ultimately, the requirement for electronic voting as standard is not a technical improvement, but high-risk political engineering. It could undermine trust in self-government, create prolonged turbulence, and give the enemy additional tools to influence the legitimacy of an independent legal situation. That is why such a recommendation should be assessed by the EU, not as a sign of progress, but as a potential regression in stability and legal certainty. Voting or a recount, doing a recount, doing digital, it lacks, at this moment, the confidence of accuracy when talking about those digital solutions. Digitization is a cross-cutting condition for the correct implementation of the roadmap in relation to the legal profession, as it directly affects the transparency and quality of key professional procedures. Access to the profession, continuing education, disciplinary responsibility, and the maintenance of registers. At the same time, digitization should be understood as a creation of a digital infrastructure for bar self-government that increases objectivity and manageability and, of course, accountability. Digital tools should be an auxiliary environment, not a replacement for the professional nature of the legal profession. Legal practice is not just a procedure, but above all communication, it is persuasion, working with evidence, clear psychology, and of course, understanding human vulnerability. Therefore, the incorrect implementation of total digitalization risks producing formal competence without professional maturity and ethical responsibility, with, of course, direct consequences to anyone interested in the access of justice. There are areas of importance when considering the roadmap or the standards of the European Union or the Council of Europe. First, the shadow reports ignore the fact that the roadmap is a policy framework and does not establish a mandatory model for the organization of bar self-government. Instead, the framework goals, transparency, accountability, and efficiency, are interpreted as a basis for reestablishing institutions, introducing external control mechanisms, or actually changing the nature of self-government. This replaces the logic of the roadmap, which provides for evolutionary improvement through institutional procedures rather than dismantling and replacement. Second, shadow reporting systematically fails to take into account the steps already taken to implement European standards as set out in Bar Council of Ukraine Decision number 125 and the roadmap implementation process. There is no analysis of the implementation of EU directives on cross-border activities of lawyers, the improvement of disciplinary procedures, the functioning of the continuing education system, and quality assurance mechanisms. Internal independent financial control. All these are important. Such omission of facts creates a false picture of zero progress and really undermines the integrity of the assessment. Third, there is no crisis, regardless of what these coordinated shadow reports may say. Allow the UNBA to continue to make progress to improve the bar, which they are doing, even in wartime. These NGOs have a built-in conflict of interest, since they depend on money from donations and grants and are accompanied by those individuals, their bias and motivation. And to ensure the right to defense in criminal proceedings, also to support the functioning of the judicial system, records human rights violations and war crimes, and provides access to the international justice mechanism. The delegitimization or institutional weakening of barred self-government during wartime creates practical risk, from a decline in the quality of procedural guarantees and access to legal aid to undermining the trust in justice in communities directly affected by the war. The famous line, "The first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers," came from Shakespeare's Henry VI, Part 2 and Act 4, Scene 2. It is spoken by the character Dick the Butcher, a follower of the rebel leader Jack Cade, who believes that eliminating lawyers is necessary to overthrow the government and establish a totalitarian regime. Dedicated lawyers are necessary to protect our society and our freedom against those who wish evil upon Ukraine. The question is not a choice between reform and status quo, but a choice between institutional improvement and systemic destabilization. The independent legal profession and protection mechanisms the bar provides are among the first targets of pressure. If this lawfare attack weakens the bar, it is not reform. Anything that weakens the bar weakens Ukraine. Through the planned evolutionary process, you will make the bar stronger, more effective, maintain its constitutional independence and self-government, and you will make Ukraine stronger. And ultimately, one day, by Ukraine's inclusion in the EU, will make the EU stronger. Let's work to strengthen the Ukrainian National Bar Association as we prepare and plan for the future. Do not allow politically minded outsiders to weaken it. The Ukrainian National Bar Association was created from scratch and has gone on an amazing journey of hard work to create this. And this is necessary for the good of the profession and for Ukrainian citizens. Let's continue to make the bar better despite the challenges and propaganda from outside, well-funded groups that want to sow discord for their own gain and interest. These information attacks against the bar need to stop for the good of the country. The attacks are coordinated and clearly well-funded, and those attack groups do not have the best interests of the legal profession in Ukraine at heart. These information attacks against the bar, as I said, need to stop for the good of the country. The attacks are very well coordinated and clearly very well funded, and those attack groups do not have the best interests of the legal profession in Ukraine at heart, or the best interests of Ukraine. We wish to improve it. They wish to harm it. Please join us to make it the best that it can be. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman. To conclude, we want everyone to know that the document will be available to you after this briefing, and it'll also be available on our website. In taken as a whole, our research objectives will cover several points. As you'll read, it is a lengthy document, but it's real data. This is empirical data. It's not an echo chamber, and I think you'll be interested in the findings. We assess the perception of the bar by the citizens of Ukraine. We investigated the opinion of judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement officials. We located and found out the advocates' position on their independence, their sense of security, their attitude towards the bar, disciplinary procedures, and financial requirements of their self-government. We analyzed the views of the representatives of the bar's self-government bodies. And through all of this, the document's objective is to form a balanced, analytical picture for you to read and to observe. So thank you very much, and at this point, we'd open for questions.
Yes, thank you all for a very interesting presentation. Now, questions, Martin first.
Thank you so much, Denis, and thank you for your work, thank you for your support to Ukraine. And I haven't read this report, obviously, because it's not published yet. Therefore, there's a question from my side. Well, there's a saying, never waste a good crisis. I wouldn't say that this is the good crisis in Ukraine. I think this is the worst crisis possible. There is a bloody, brutal war. Yes. Okay, sure.
the war made by the war criminals, and but Ukrainians.
Jesus. Yeah, not Jesus.
You are very popular.
Just
Do you have any more?
legal support, not Jesus. Yet.
Okay, where I am. All right. So, but I think Ukrainians has made a lot to change the legal system, as well improve their fight against corruption. And I'm not only a politician, and also the private first class, and my unit works on to counter the disinformation propaganda. And we also made assessments about what kind of propaganda is spread from Russia towards the Ukraine. And number one is not that they are Nazis or the government ruled by Washington or Brussels. Number one, that they are the most corrupted nation in the world. And it's so unfair, because we all know that they have done so much and they still fight. And there is no countries, I think, in European continent who has like zero level of corruption, all of this continuous fight. So do your report also include some assessment about the corruption in the Ukrainian legal system, and also somehow, can prove that all of this is mostly disinformation? Thank you.
Well, I mean, to the extent, do I need a microphone? Okay. So, I mean, corruption in the Ukrainian legal system is it's a broad topic, right? I mean, you could either be talking about judges, you could be talking about lawyers themselves, you could be talking about police. So obviously this report is not so broad that it goes into details in any one of those things. But what it does do is it talks about those types of things that you have to have developing in a bar association that would be one that contributes to a decrease in corruption. So, for example, the regular training and professional development that is required by the bar, which, by the way, the shadow report completely ignores and also recommends in some cases to undo. Yeah. It is this professional development through which anti-corruption programs are being trained to lawyers and anti-corruption law is being discussed. So I mean, we don't address corruption head-on in that way, but the things that contribute to institutional decrease in corruption professionally in Ukraine are the things that we think are under attack, right? And so, to that extent, we see this report as defending a system that is helping and has been helping to decrease corruption over time. But in particular individual cases or different aspects of it, we don't go into great detail there. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you.
But I would add to that, it also addresses the perceptions that make people vulnerable to disinformation. And we see it in different stratas of how the Russians have attacked, being an evangelical pastor, they've attacked the freedom of religion in Ukraine. And so you have to respond with facts. You have so much in the shadow reports that it's not data. And so we hope that the analysis is laid before a considerate reader who would go through it intellectually and be intellectually honest will no longer be vulnerable to the winds of disinformation.
Yeah, thank you for interest.
Thank you, Rainis.
Is it on?
Any mics?
Too many. Too many, man. I'm like mined, huh? By mics. No, it looks like.
All right.
That's good.
All right.
A little? Yes.
A big and little all around. Thank you for your interest, first of all, to Ukraine and to Ukraine's present situation. I highly appreciate the US support for Ukraine's membership in the European Union. It's a bit unusual, I have to admit. Hearing some critical remarks from Trump administration towards EU, but nevertheless, hopefully Ukraine will make European Union better.
and will reform for better end. Yeah, but I mean, membership in EU means harmonization with certain legal provisions and norms and regulations, as well as with EU Council of Europe, by the way, provisions, and US is a part of the Council of Europe, which I appreciate as well. You know, those reform goals or criteria, like increasing transparency, accountability, they sound great, and it should be as a final destination. I mean, to what extent you think the working group which was established earlier this year by the government of Ukraine pursues those goals? Accountability, better accountability, transparency. To what extent, I mean, the drafts so far circulating around might contradict with the previous goals which we support. And I noticed that there is a disagreement on kind of the self-governance issue. Can you explain, I mean, what will be a major change from present to a draft kind of reform? You think will be really a decrease in self-governance of Ukraine's Bar Association if those proposals are taken aboard? Because I'm not personally aware of the all, let's say, concrete proposals which are in those working group lines. So I would appreciate being better explained in this regard. Thank you.
So thank you very much. That's an excellent question. I think we're approaching our analysis of the bar as we would, like any bar association is set forth in law. So lawyers have an obligation to be a member, right, of the association. So within that, it is incredibly important. I mean, this is something that has a requirement on a profession. So its independence is paramount, okay? And if the debate being had is the degree to which that independence would be compromised if you have outside oversight. Who would have that oversight? And I think that in some countries where you perhaps have a more developed governing system and much more transparent one, you would have perhaps less questions about government entities having some degree, some role in oversight of this type of organization, and even then that's debatable. But I believe that in the case of Ukraine, we err on the side that self-governance of the bar will provide it with stronger independence than any kind of governmental overreach or oversight. And that could change over time, but we don't think that's where things are right now. And again, I finally would go back to challenging everybody to take a very careful look at those organizations which are advocating not just for reform in the accountability within the bar, which the bar has admitted itself that it has needed over time, and it has gone to great lengths to address that. But what are they advocating? They are advocating that unaccountable, opaque, politically oriented NGOs be the ones that provide the accountability. Again, over a profession where everyone is required to be a member of that, which would give incredible power to a small clique of people. And that's kind of what we're trying to highlight here. And just make certain that, that this is taken into account. Nobody is suggesting that there is not a need for constant improvement in any of the professional organizations in Ukraine.
Can I add also, because I think it's such an appropriate question, and some of the data in the report will address it, but I think one of the areas, just as a layman and some of the conversations, is that first you have a constitutionally established institution that is to be independent. So this self-government, how do you define it? What is your criteria? Because as I understand it, there's maybe 24 different bar associations all having a different level of criteria based upon their nation. The same would go with transparency. So one man saying he's transparent is another man saying you're covering something up. We have to know what criteria to measure the transparency by. And I think if you, it might be a good exercise just to go to the bar's website. I think their transparency is forthcoming, and I think in fact that they offer more than maybe even required. But again, until the criteria is a bit more detailed, it just becomes a bar fight, pun intended.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Do you hear me? Yeah, good. My name is Milana Halovani, I'm a Ukrainian journalist. Actually, this is a question for Mr. Hudson. I didn't really get your full points on shadow reports. I mean, can you name it as a good quality document that reflects the real situation, or some information could be twisted here? Thanks.
No, I think we're pretty clear that we're quite critical of the shadow report. When the shadow report was investigating just the professional development programming for the Bar Association, they never even reached out to the Bar Association and interviewed them on it. I mean, that record, I mean, there's countless practices that I think those who put this report together fell short on. Again, I don't want to question their motives, right, of those here in Brussels who oversaw this reporting. But what I am suggesting is they have an over-reliance on certain people and groups in Ukraine, and that influences how they are assessing the bar, and the type of real rigorous analysis using polling data, using professional interviews, it just falls short. And so I mean, this is why we're here.
Thank you. My name is Andrei. I'm an assistant to the parliament here, but also I used to be a defense attorney for 10 years in Ukraine. Also involved in represented people in anti-corruption investigations. So I know the matter, let's say, from inside a bit, and I was, so I would like maybe not to ask the question, but if I may just to reflect, especially on that phrase that this report should be perceived with a grain of salt. I fully support this because perhaps there was a question regarding the disinformation, perhaps disinformation is not the correct word here, but maybe rather fragmented information that was provided, because some parts of the rule of law reform, let's say, they were left aside from the content, and it's a bit of concern. Why? Because when we talk about rule of law reform, very quite frequently we say and link it to the anti-corruption reform, but they are actually not the same, and they should be more differentiated from my perspective. Why? Because the work of courts is separate from the work of investigators and civil society. And but in Ukraine we have, it's like a merged definition, which eventually hampers the reforms itself. Why? Because, for example, if there are now anti-corruption investigations, they are turning into shows. So the whole country can observe what's happening. There are like leaks of classified materials. They becoming as a standard practice. No one gets punished for this, despite it's prohibited by the law. And certain and almost all the time the same actors, the same media get access to this. So there are, to my perception, there are certain already established connections, how those materials get to, become available for the same media, and then it's presented against the person. So the person, there are some photos of money and etc., to create some perception, public perception of this person. Why it is dangerous? Because then the public shapes their opinion, and then the case goes to court for intermediary measures, for some restrictive measures, as after notice of suspicion, etc. And if the court has a courage to rule something against custody, then it immediately creates a wave of hatred towards the court. And this court usually is newly established anti-corruption court, who was established also by those organizations, by also involving international experts. And this and people do not really get into details about the risks, about legal arguments, etc., about legal procedures. They're not aware, but what they know that another corruptioner escaped the jail. That's what they see. And moreover, it also goes against the judges and against attorneys, against legal professionals. I was, let's say, a victim of this. There were certain publications because I dared to say something against anti-corruption prosecutor. These people then treated not by their professionalism, by their professional qualification, but by the names of their clients. So, and there are now it's also standard practice, also by civil society, by media, that they put a label, okay, this attorney represented these bad guys, so see, he's a bad, he cannot be trusted, etc., etc. There's no legal arguments. There's always arguments against people, which is also prohibited by Ukrainian law, by European Convention of Protection of Legal Profession. So what I want to say, the way the reforms are conducted in Ukraine, in many ways undermines the very sense of those reforms, because by this extra stress towards anti-corruption efforts, we create very high expectations against the courts, and then if there's another decision than expected, the court is the one to blame. And it means that regardless of any efforts in terms of judicial reform, the court will be always guilty, always to blame, and it undermines the very sense of that reform.
Yeah.
So
You have a good grasp of the frustration that's current. The problems are very, very real, and I think in our report it will help with empirical data to strengthen the institution rather than recreate yet one more. And the answer, you know, is always to create a new bicycle, a new institution to try to fix a consistent problem. And it's our thought from the analysis of the document that we need to strengthen the Bar Association as it is and cut down the lawfare. They're being buried in processes that are not necessary. And in that, strengthen the decision-making processes one at a time and win each battle one at a time and restore the confidence in the legal system in Ukraine. Without that, future's bleak, but I believe there's a bright future ahead for Ukraine.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Yes? Okay. Give me the mic. Yeah, thank you all for, it's a lot of information, I have a lot of think about, but of course, about the corruption, we basically, Latvia went all through this not so long time ago and still are going through this. There is issues that it's not possible to fix in the one day because it takes a lot of time, including changing of mindset of society because, you know, not so long time ago corruption was like a normal thing, like way of business, you know. And it needs to be changed. We also had all the same issues about leaking informations to media, to putting labels. It's just, you know, process of growth. It takes time, and there is no, I think, one document or one decision that can fix all these things. It just takes time, and especially now, of course, Ukraine is in very difficult situation. I can feel it also as I'm running still in Latvia, also one NGO which is helping Ukraine, donating cars, and the difficulty for Ukraine is that basically when you show the fight against the corruption, it's basically proof of corruption. Like every case which comes in media, everybody says, yeah, you see, they are super corrupt. and that is quite kind of difficult challenge, but we will survive and win. And I think today's discussions shows that we cannot like relax, that we have more battlefields than just in the front line, and our enemy is fighting in many battlefields, and of course the system of justice is like main construction of democratic country, and of course someone tries to build in some weak elements to make it unstable or vulnerable in the future. So that's why it's very important, crucial what you are doing, and thank you for that, and thank you for sharing with us, and just need to keep working, and razom переможем. Thank you.